All right, we have a fantastic podcast today. We have our great guest right below there, Coach Jerry Seymour. Let me tell you a little bit about Coach. He was Bill Walsh Minority Coaching Fellowship recipient. He was a running back himself, leading NCAA rusher at Glenville State. He was Conference Player of the Year. He's got all kinds of accolades as a running back himself. He's a head running back coach in 2019 on senior pace. He's been working with running backs, and that's why we have him on today. And he works with a lot of NFL players. I'll bring up a couple of the names. But he runs the Running Back Academy, a unique concept, obviously focused solely on the running back position. But guys like Melvin Gordon, Alfred Blue, Kenneth Wright, Jalen Samuels, all guys, a lot of guys, Giovanni Bernard, guys Lamar Miller. He's worked with all of these guys, among many others. I'm just touching kind of on some of the names here. And he's down in Florida, down in the Miami-Dade County area, and really works with a lot of the top athletes down there. The pros are just part of the process. Obviously, younger guys are going to be a large part of that part of the business. Without further ado, let's welcome Coach Jerry Seymour.
Yes, sir. Thank you guys for having me, man. I'm happy to be here, man. I'm happy to be here, man. Salute to you guys, man.
It's really great having you on. Running back, and we were kind of talking a little bit about in the pre-show. I didn't want to talk too much about it because I wanted to save it for the pod, so we get all the good nuggets. But start right with the fact that the running back position, which was being downplayed for probably, I would say, the last 5 to 10 years because of all the spread offenses. And the passing game and quarterbacks really throwing the ball from the time they were, youth high school guys all the way up, changing kind of the game overall to much more of a spread open passing game, had kind of minimized the running back positions at the highest level. I don't think high school and certain places in college, but definitely at the highest level, the NFL level. But you're seeing a resurgence, and you talked a little bit about it. Detroit Lions obviously lining up and running the ball. Some teams are starting to utilize. They don't utilize fullback as much as they used to in the old ways, but they're taking those tight ends and the H-back type guys and utilizing them in that area and running the ball. And my thought process is a little bit of it has to do with tackling, right? We tackle less in practice. And over time, those guys are not quite as good at tacklers as they used to be. So you get yourself a really good running back who's tough and physical, and it's going to be hard to stop. So talk about the evolution of the running back position. I grew up in the, my heroes were guys like Walter Payton, Tony Dorsett, Herschel Walker. I mean, you name it, Eric Dickerson. Those are the guys I loved growing up, right? And they ran the ball 300 times plus in the NFL, right?
Yes, man.
That's changed a lot, but maybe coming back. Talk a little bit about the evolution of the running back position and what you're seeing.
I think, honestly, man, first and foremost, I'm happy that, Detroit, what they're doing and what they're showing on TV, it's just basically just physical football, man. They're actually still lining up in our formation. I'm actually got a campaign that says bring back our formation, right? So, what I think about it, right? So what I think about it is, these officer coordinators and, they try to get too fancy, you know what I mean? Like they sometimes I believe that they get away from where it says keep it simple, stupid, kiss, right? Instead of just keeping it simple and just saying, you know what, we're just going to have a tough run game. Let's line it up. Let's hand it off. Let's beat the defense up. Or let's just force them to be strong, right? Let's just force them to be aggressive. Eventually what's going to happen is it's just going to degrade them. I mean, look what Detroit did to the team yesterday, man. They beat the team. It was a college score, right? Like it looked like a P4 playing a mid-major school. And the reason why I'm saying is officer coordinators, what they try to do is I just think they get a little bit too fancy instead of just, they want to get all these fancy plays, and they're forcing these quarterbacks, these young quarterbacks who are coming in, they're forcing them to throw the ball 30, 40 times instead of, just handing the ball off. Let's get this guy comfortable. Let's work some play action. And, the quarterbacks are losing confidence, and what's happening is these teams are crumbling. So I just think that what they need to do is they just need to just continue to just run the ball, get a 2-3 running back system and just degrade teams that way. Because as I told you before, like I remember, I'm gonna say that this is the last thing I'm gonna say. I remember the Detroit Lions name. I always get his name messed up. Dan Campbell, right? I remember
Yeah.
they were practicing one summer and he had a speech to the team and he's like, "Look, I know you guys are pissed at me for making you guys put on pads, but we have to be physical. We have to tackle." I don't know if you guys ever seen that speech. And that right
Yeah,
then
yeah,
and
yeah. I
there
think he did
told
it. He did it on Hard Knocks. I
yeah,
think he did.
Hard
That's when
Knocks.
he did it.
Right, right, right. And that's when I realized, like, you know what, man, like teams are not that physical. Like
Makes
Dan
sense.
Campbell gets it. He gets it. You know, if you could be physical and just run the ball down these people's throat, man, I'm telling you, you'll be successful. And I know Detroit's going back, man, and they're just one of the teams that's really just showing like, just hard-nosed old school football.
Yeah, and I think you're starting to see it a little bit across the NFL, and it's starting to look. College, you've always had your certain. We talked a little bit about off air. The Big Ten and how they play football. The
Right.
Iowas, Wisconsin before they just fired Phil
Yes.
Longo,
Yes, sir.
yesterday or whatever. But still, there was still always that downhill type of physicality. You saw Michigan really start to
Yep.
lay it out last year, line up in the old school Maryland T and all that other kind of
Yep.
stuff. And just like you said, physically beating down defenses where you're just running the ball and you're chipping away. Whereas, in the college game, as offenses spread out, now defenses and teams started to recruit to be able
Hmm.
to cover that. So you're starting
Right.
to see a lot of more tweeners rather than, true linebackers, guys that can cover more, maybe strong safety type guys. And that kind of now, if you go back, you see these offenses start to go back. Now they just can't handle that many guys like in the box,
Yeah.
right? So you're
Yeah.
talking about chipping away with guys. And then you want to take it down to the high school level. And Dave and
Hmm.
I have talked about this numerous times with numerous coaches. You just don't get the amount of time to tackle.
Right. Right.
And it's a different game when you're talking physicality, even from, 5, 6, 7 years ago. It's totally changed.
Yep.
And
Hmm.
now you're starting to see that running back, have a different role, right? For a couple of years now, look, he's a guy that needs to be able to spread out in the slot, run routes, screen passes. The days of a 3-down running back have been gone for a long
Yes, it
time.
is.
The days of a
Mhm.
fullback have really been gone. You're seeing more of that H position guy that can get out there and go. But this resurgence now, it gets,
Yes.
I mean, look, it gets us excited, all of us
Yeah.
excited, right? Because that's what we grew up on. You
Right.
grew up seeing the run,
Yeah.
run on first down, run on second down, play action, right?
Yeah.
The days now, it's like nobody's under center, all these kind of things, but it's exciting. And the young kids growing up, everybody starts as a running back because
Right.
not
Yep.
everybody throws at that low level. And Dave can attest to it. He coaches his son who's 9U right now.
Yep.
And yeah, we try to throw, or everybody tries to throw at that level, but after a while, it's only so much you can do in terms
Yep.
of that. So majority of these kids kind of start as running backs.
Yep.
And then as
Yep.
they progress through in their maturity, they kind of go a different way.
Right.
And now with this whole running back coming back, like it's exciting, right? Because
Yeah.
that's the type of football I feel like a lot of the fans now that are really invested into it, that's what they're looking for. That's what they're expecting. And,
Yes.
that running back position, it is a tough position, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you got to be that guy. Talk about some of the intangibles that you feel like those running backs need, right? Or need to start with at a young age, at least fundamentally wise, to kind of progress and be one of those guys moving forward.
I think ultimately it just comes down to that it factor. You know what I mean? Like a lot of guys can kind of work towards it, but a lot of guys that's in the NFL right now, they have a specific talent that really just separates them from everybody else, right? Like I think the first thing it just comes down, like a lot of people talk about speed, right? Like I think you really have to have like stop and go ability. I think that's what separates a lot of the running backs. If the line if the running back position was based off speed, then every running back that ran a 4.3 would be leading the league when it comes to records and stuff like that. But you get a guy like Frank Gore, you get a guy like LaDainian Tomlinson, right? You get a guy like Barry Sanders. I think he was like a 4.4 guy, but their stop and go ability was just insane. And I think that's the hidden intangible that a lot of people don't talk about. They say speed kills, but what happens when the defense in the NFL is just as fast as you? What are you going to do now? You know what I mean? Like, you got to be able to set up defenders. You know, you got to be able to, you know, have a nice tempo to set up your blocks, let your guys climb to the second level. And you got to be, I call it the art of deception. You got to be really good at deceiving, you know, defenders, right? So I think that's the hidden intangible that a lot of people don't talk about, really, is stop and go ability. And just to kind of capitalize on what you said, like, it's a lot of times when I'm training my NFL running backs, because I train them at a gym, right, where there's a whole bunch of other NFL guys. You would be amazed that every guy, even the D lineman, was like, hey, I started off as a running back. So it really is the foundational position, you know, at least for a lot of guys that's in the league, because honestly, you know, running back was the guy in youth football because nobody throws the ball. But one thing I wanted to say is I don't think you know, a lot of offensive coordinators, they get a lot of credit when you just run the ball, right? It's not fancy. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, you don't
That
really,
makes a lot
you
of
know what I'm
sense.
saying? Like
Yeah.
the Andy Reeds, you know, the head
It's
coach
not
from the
that wow
Dolphins.
factor, right? It's
Yeah,
not
you
that
know,
big
with all these
play
guys running
down
and
the
motions,
field.
you know, they don't really get, because the Detroit Lions offensive coordinator, he's not nearly talked about as much as he
Oh,
should
hell
be.
no.
You know what I mean? Like, if you hear about offensive coordinators, you're hearing about all these other guys, but you're not really hearing about that guy and what
Not
he's
fancy.
doing, because it's very simple. And I'll even go back to when the 49ers was in the Super Bowl. They could have literally won the Super Bowl if they just kept handing McCaffrey the ball. It's like
Yep.
they let McCaffrey get them down to the 20, the 15, and then they decided to throw the ball 3 times in a row. You know, that's that Kyle Shanahan, you know, want to be fancy, want to throw the ball, because that's what I'm saying. Like, offensive coordinators get their credit off of
Yeah.
passing. They don't really get their credit off of handing the ball off. But, you know, I kind of answered 2 of your questions. But yeah,
You're
that
good.
hidden intangible is the stop and go ability, my brother. That's it. Stop and go.
That's a great point you make too about coordinators, because
That is.
when something goes wrong
Yep.
offensively, they
Mhm.
always point to a guy not being creative enough.
Right.
You notice that? Like, they always
Yeah.
go, "Oh,
Oh, he's so plain
he's not
Jane.
creative enough," right? So,
Predictable. Yeah.
right,
Yes.
predictable, right? And that's usually means some form of the running game, right? So
Right.
it's, but obviously when it works really well, nobody really like points to that as being the reason that it's working well. I think that's a really, really valuable point. I think too that the running back position, the balance required for a running back too. So you talked about the stop and go ability, but also the balance, the ability,
Hmm.
that ability to have balance when you get hit and to
Hmm.
continue to be able to move is a unique thing of great running backs. Like, they continue to move forward. And the other thing I would say is, like, not just the stop and go ability, but their ability to make cuts moving down the field. Like, you
Yep.
see,
Advancement.
obviously,
Yeah.
like,
Yes.
the difference between like X running back here and this running back there. Now, Barry Sanders is a little different. He was able to go laterally and do
Hmm.
unbelievable things. He was obviously gifted in a whole different
He's an
realm.
anomaly.
Yeah.
Right. But most running backs, the ability to make those moves and still gain ground is
Hmm.
so unique. Like, as you see, like, when you see a high school back who could do that, you're like, oh, that guy's going to be really good. Because a lot of high
Hmm.
school backs have to go laterally only to be able to
Hmm.
then move forward. And the guys that
Yep.
are able to go forward doing that, it's like they're almost unstoppable, really,
Right.
because
Correct.
they're picking up yards on their bad runs. And you're
Hmm.
like, oh, we
Yeah.
wrapped him up, and it's like 2nd and 6. You're like, oh my goodness, he still
Yep.
gained 4 yards. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's the thing that I think is so unique. But I really agree with you that the defense, the thing that has to happen is offensive coordinators have to shift with to combat the weaknesses of what defensive players have now, right?
Hmm.
Everybody's tried to stop the pass game. What Derek said, recruited. Derek was actually talking about a couple of years ago. I think when we first started these podcasts, was talking about how he thinks that the run game was going to become more and more important because of the fact that we couldn't tackle and
Hmm.
guys are trying to get more speed on the field, right?
Right.
Well, how do you combat a team that's much might be faster than you? You get big bodies in there and you push them forward, right? Because they
Yeah.
got to be lighter if they're going to be
Right.
faster for the most part, right?
Absolutely.
So,
Run at them.
talk about like some of the training methods and the things that you like to work with guys on, really help them. Like, obviously, there's a certain level of innate talent that running backs have, but to really
Hmm.
round out their skill set and make them elite.
Yeah, I think the really the toughest thing about it is, all these guys that I work with, so sometimes I have a Jonathan Taylor in a group, I have a Giovanni Bernard, I'll have an Aaron Jones, I'll have a, what's another kid, a Blake Corum. Each one of these guys have a
Yeah, I
different
saw that
style
you
of
worked with
running.
Blake. I
Yeah,
saw that
man,
you
like
worked
each one of these
with
guys will have like a different style of running. So I have to create a drill, you know what I mean, based upon that's going to help these guys maximize their ability, you know what I mean? And, you know, so a lot of my training concepts is just really just downhill running. You know what I mean? Get downhill, cut, advance upfield. A lot of footwork. It's not too much a lot of lateral movement. I just want these guys to progress upfield as fast as they can, which I'm capitalizing on what you were saying, because what's happening is a lot of these guys are going from a college style offense, and I'm just talking to my college guys that's going to the NFL, to now they're actually playing under center. The quarterback's getting under center and handing on the ball off. So a lot of the training methods is, man, it's just making cuts, getting downfield as fast as you can, no wasted movement, because obviously, you get a lot of these guys that are running back coaches. They'll have these guys standing in one spot, just cutting, 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 and they're not progressing upfield. Well, I tell a lot of these guys, hey, man, what are you going to do in that backside D lineman that's coming around, that's wrapping around that corner? You know, he's gonna tackle you if you stay in that spot for too long. And I tell a lot of my guys is that, the difference between high school and NFL is that defensive linemen are making more tackles downfield. That
Oh, hell
that is
yeah.
the biggest difference. You know what I mean? So what are
Those
you
dudes
doing
are
to progress
tasty.
upfield to kind of get, yeah, bro? Like, what are you doing to get upfield to 20 yards as fast as you can? So my training method is really just easy, man. I line those guys up. I kind of, we take their steps, because every team has different steps that they take, because like you say, the Rams may do a different dual step than the Bengals. You know what I mean? So I just try to make it as familiar as possible to them, but the movements is all the same for the guys. So it's really nothing special, man. It's just really just making sure that these guys is getting their bodies in and out that same spot as less time as possible. So it's really almost like a track meet for real. It's like, hey man, you make this cut, get downfield, maybe make
Right.
another cut, but you better go and finish like 20, 40 yards down the field. So it's really nothing special, man. It's just more so
But I
just getting
think
these guys
the
downfield.
mentality, right? But you got to instill that mentality, like you said, that downhill running, where, like you said,
Yep.
as the higher the level you get, the
Yep.
less time you have to make those quote decisions in the backfield. So if you can
Right.
instill that muscle memory, that innate ability to hit the hole one cut while going forward,
Right.
and it's the same thing, when I teach my wideouts, right? All these guys
Mm-hmm.
want to make 50 million moves at the line to get a release,
No,
and
right.
you're going nowhere. You got to make those moves while going upfield to create that separation to get off the ball. There's not enough
Mm-hmm.
time. And the higher the
Yeah.
level, the better the players, the less time that is to make
Right.
those moves and get going. You only
Right.
have to get to 10 yards, right, for a first down. That's the goal. We
That's
all
the
want to
goal.
break those ones big, big, big. And again, that's why, going back to what we just said, offensive coordinators get no credit when it becomes
Mm-mm.
2nd and 4, 3rd and 1, first down, right?
Right.
1st and 10,
Right.
2nd and 6, 3rd and 3, first down. Nobody talks
Right.
about how that progressing down the field,
Mm-hmm.
it's just not fancy. So when you can
Right.
instill that, and I'm sure that is extremely difficult when you get these
Yeah.
guys going from college to pro, because
Mm-hmm.
these guys talk about it all the time. The difference between the college and the pro game
Speed.
is, the speed, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
The defensive line and their ability to chase from the backside or run down a running back as he goes 10 yards downfield is the separation factor.
It's the pursuit. And one thing I did miss, and also just creating that vision for those guys. So whenever I'm
Right.
training these guys, like I say, hey, we're gonna run dual this side, the center and the guard, they're gonna double up, they're gonna climb to this backer. This backer, he tries to shoot this gap, he tries to come backside really fast. Okay, and then this play side, this strong safety, he's down in the box, he's crashing. So I'm actually having that kind of conversation with those guys so they can get the picture in their head. Okay, this is how he wants this drill to be ran. So
Got it.
it's a lot of running back lingo. Okay, they're going to be traying to the play side. This center, he crosses the center's face, so you got to get through there really fast. That linebacker, what he does, he's crashing down, so you got to cut back inside. So it can be really confusing, but the NFL guys understand what I'm saying. So a lot of times my
You're
training
coaching a
terminology,
different level of player.
yeah, bro, yeah. So when it gets to those guys, it's more so just terminology and just trying to create that kind of that vision
Vision.
for those guys so they can imagine in their head. And a lot of times I don't have a lot of equipment. A lot of times we just get into role playing because they're old enough and they're mature enough to kind of understand, like, okay, even though there's no physical bodies out here, I have to put in my mind that there's actually people trying to tackle me. So that's where it comes with the mindset. Like, you'll think that, like, by the time we get done with a session, man, these guys are dripping wet because we really dove in mentally in the session just to kind of getting those guys to role play. So I'm really big on role playing with these guys too as well.
Yeah, I think the running back position, the skill set required in order to be the elite, you talked about it. It really is less about all these fancy things, and it's about being able to see, know where you are, be able to feel it, and able to explode when you need to, right, and be able to have patience when you need to, right, and great running backs start that. They have an initial feel for it, but you're enhancing that feel. You're doing things to really enhance that feel and to get them a whole nother level. It's interesting too, because when you talked about getting downhill, and it's funny because you probably laugh when you see all these Instagram trainers, right? And you're working with elite guys, so they know to come to you. But it's funny because I see so much emphasis on like lateral, right? And I'm like, okay, that's gonna work, against the team that's not that good, and he's gonna look like he's off the wall. But when they play a team that has speed, okay, and can come off the edge and is physical, that guy's all of a sudden gonna get hit right in the mouth. And all the drills you've been doing with him lateral, he's gonna question his whole existence as a running back. And he's not going to be able to run well, right? That's exactly what's going to happen. He's like, well, I'm working all this stuff, and it ain't working. It's like, well, no, you've been focused on lateral when you got to focus on north and south and linear. And figured out those things. And I think that's the thing that, like, it's all about that explosion and that speed moving forward. And, yes, you have to obviously have the ability. But I use, like, my favorite college running back, and I think he should be the Heisman Trophy winner, but it'll obviously be a battle. Is Ginty from Boise.
I love him.
From Boise.
He's moving forward. He's making the moves. He's balanced. He's patient. And I think it's he's I also love his
stance. You love his stance.
Oh yeah, the natural intimidation factor, like
the Halloween.
Right.
He's standing up there, and he's basically saying, "Hey, I can stand this way. I'm better than you, and you're gonna feel me. You know what I mean?"
Right.
And he's obviously they don't use the kind of dot the I, but he's so far back, he's essentially dotting the I the way he stands. It's almost like a modern version of the I with what they're using, the way they have him lined up so far back. I mean, he's really far back. Even when they're in gun and pistol and stuff, he's back. Like a solid.
Dave, what do you think he's at yardage wise? You think he's like what, 7, 8?
Yeah, he's at 7.5, 8 yards.
At least, yeah.
7.5. Yeah, I counted it. And, that, and like I told you, they get him rolling downhill. You know what I mean? So by the time he gets the ball, bro, he's at full speed. And he's able to make those sharp cuts downhill and kind of, work the downhill angles. You know what I mean? So instead of him jump cutting laterally, when he jump cuts, he kind of jump cuts upfield diagonal. You know what I mean? So his jump cut is gaining ground. It's not staying even, then advancing upfield. You know what I mean? And Ashton Ginty, man, like, when I look at that kid, the most amazing the most amazing thing about him is when the defender hits him, it's the way that they just fall down. You know what I mean? Like when they hit him, it's like they're hitting a brick wall. Like, and I don't think that's something that people are harping on. Like I've watched, I'm actually gonna post something on Instagram and just watching when somebody hits him, they just fall. It's amazing when you see it. He's not even moving back. It's like he stops for a second and he just advances upfield. But he has that running back build. Like he's like a brick. You know what I mean? Like he's built like the traditional
he's got the big
running
shoulders.
Old school. Yeah, the big shoulders, the Emmitt Smith, the Barry Sanders kind of build. The Thurman Thomas. He got builds like those guys. So when people try to hit him, man, it's just like I'm pretty sure he hurts people. He's not even physically trying to run them over. I think he's hurting people when they just run into him.
Where you see him like
for sure
and run into it. He's just who he is.
Yeah, he's not even delivering blows. It's just like they're hitting him and they're not even being successful in that. So but that's something. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
that build, you can't get to his legs. You know what I'm
Nah,
saying?
man.
So
That's
Right.
thick.
that's always the thing that wears down taller running backs a lot of times, is that they keep getting beat on their legs right over and over.
Yep.
They may be, it's the unique tall running back that's able to weather the storm for a long haul. Not that they could look, running backs come in all shapes.
Eddie
and sizes.
George.
Literally, running backs come in all shapes and sizes. But Genty's hard to get to. He's kind of like, when I see a guy that's like 5'10", like you said, that Emmitt Smith build, that 5'10", 215, 220, they're tall enough, which means they have enough weight on them that they can't get knocked over by a bigger guy just because he's heavier than them,
Correct.
But they're thick enough that they're like the 5'7" back that that is really, really low to the ground and hard to see, right? So it's an interesting, like Genty has that, like he's like that 5'9", 5'10", and you can't get through his legs, and he's still really strong and big enough that, like, you come downhill as a linebacker, a 235-pound linebacker, he thinks he's going to tackle him because he's bigger, and he's just not. He gets run over. He's not low enough. He's not low enough to be able to tackle him. Sometimes the guy that's like 5'7", 185, even though girth-wise and he's the same, equivalent to a 5'9", 250 guy, he's just lighter. So a linebacker that's heavier just knocks him down, not because he's stronger, just because it's just a sure weight thing. And
physics.
It's that physics, right? It's that physics which makes it hard. That's why Maurice Jones-Drew was so amazing.
Oh, God.
Oh, gosh. Yes, Lord.
225, dude. I mean, he was as thick as the 5'10", 5'11" guys, thicker than them. He could weather it. But it's so interesting to see. And that's what I love about the running back position is they come in all it's the only
shapes
position,
and sizes, man.
The only position in the NFL, like when people are like, talk to me and like recruiting, they're like, well, is he? I said running back. It has nothing to do, unless you're really, really light in the butt. It has very little to do with your height. It's how good are you?
Yes.
How good are you? That good? Well, I mean, are you that good?
And think about it, like
running backs are a dime a dozen in the world, right?
Well, and that's what I was. That's where I'm just going to piggyback off, right? Like you look at like a Saquon, right? And it's the Giants. Like, hey, you can kind of go, we'll find whatever, and now look at just that whole. How he has literally, you know what I mean? If he could stay healthy, right? Which is always a big thing for running backs because of the beating that they take normally, because they got to go past pro and they got to do all this other kind of stuff. But there's ways to obviously protect your running back. But, as I digress, you can see Saquon, just that it factor of him being able to do the things that he does, moving from one team to another. Justin, it's right up there when you're talking offenses. Like, we all know you need a quarterback, but that running back,
man,
that was the position. And Coach, you referenced it earlier about younger quarterbacks having to do so much so early. We all know, and if you don't, the greatest asset to a young quarterback is a hell of a running back.
Yes,
because when all this shit's flying and the bullets going nuts, like, hey, I can turn around, hand it to this guy. He's going to get me 4 or 5. That's a difference maker, right?
Yeah, man.
And these young guys don't have that, quote, protection anymore.
Yep. They're asking young quarterbacks to do a lot with a little. You know what I mean? Like Caleb Williams, man. Like, it's like you feel bad for that kid. You know what I mean? Like, and what's Bo Nix? You know what I mean? Like even though Bo Nix is doing really, really good this year, it's like you're asking these young guys like Zach Wilson, who was with the Jets last year, right? I mean, 2 years ago. Like, they asked this kid to go in and save the Jets. Like, you can't ask a 22-year-old kid to come in and save an organization. It's just not going to happen. And I'll tell you right now,
Manning led the league in interceptions his rookie year.
You know what I mean? Like, and he had the opportunity to hand it off to Edgerrin James. You get it? So it's like, come on, dude. But I think, a lot of people forget about that San Diego Chargers when they had that 3-headed monster. When they had LaDainian Tomlinson. Remember, they had Michael the Turner Burner, and they had Darren Sproles. And as we talked about shapes and sizes, and they had Lorenzo Neal. And when we talk about shapes and sizes, all those guys were very, very completely different in shapes and sizes. Obviously LaDainian, he was a lot taller and leaner. Mike Turner Burner was thick and stocky
eh,
bowling ball, and Darren Sproles was the average 185.7 quick guy. So a lot of
I mean,
times
he
we
was
forget about
small
that
as hell.
backfield. Yeah, we forget about that backfield, man. And they were really, really. They never won a Super Bowl, but when Coach talked about different shapes and sizes, I automatically think about that backfield, and all three of those guys got chances to touch the football and do something with it.
I mean, you even look at like the Giants when they won the Super Bowl, right?
Yep.
Brandon
Jacobs.
Ahmad Bradshaw.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I was just thinking that.
Yeah,
And I was,
Ahmad Bradshaw.
even when the Patriots were great, he utilized so many
everyone.
backs. He had what's his name who played at Oregon, who was Blunt. Blunt. He had
Blount.
He had White. As well, James White, who was a receiver kind of guy. He had
Danny Woodhead.
Different guys that all fit situations and utilize them. And they were a spread team. Like I always thought that, like when people are like, "Oh, the Patriots, they want to throw the ball." When they get in the Super Bowl, they turn it completely around. They ran the ball at you because you're like, we have Tom Brady. They're like, everyone thinks, "Oh, Tom Brady, we're going to spread the ball around." Blah 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 blah. And when it got every time in the Super Bowl, whoever he had Corey Dillon the one year, when he gets that he needed that back, because when he gets to the Super Bowl, he's going to turn around and hand the ball off, and you're going to be like, wait a minute, what's going on here? Why did Tom Brady hand the ball off? Because he knows you're going to sit there. That was what I thought was so great about Belichick during those time periods. He knew Tom Brady was the top quarterback, and they were going to try and stop him.
And so did the defense.
Exactly. And he'd turn around and hand the ball off. And those guys would have huge gains. He would throw the ball.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Dave, that last Super Bowl that they won, James White, I believe, right? And then Sony Michel. Like, Sony Michel, like, come on, like, what are we doing here, dude? Throw in Danny Woodhead, with Gronk at tight end or an H. Listen, the whole thing was when they had Aaron Hernandez that could do all of it, right? And that was correct. A whole different freaking thing. But, I mean, look, when it comes down to it, playoff football is about running the football.
You know what I mean? Yep. And let's talk about last year. 3 of the 4 teams utilized the fullback last year in the AFC and NFC championship. Because obviously it was the Ravens, they utilized the fullback. The Detroit Lions, they utilized the fullback. And who was the other team that the Niners, they utilized the fullback. You know what I mean? So, and one thing about the NFL is a very copycat league. If they see you're successful at something, they're gonna damn sure take that. They're gonna copycat.
I mean, look at Shanahan's father, right? Like when he had Terrell Davis. Listen, every year it seemed like a Bronco running back was the guy, right? Terrell Davis, and then it was like Gary, I believe, and then they had someone else. They had fullbacks and those types of things. Every year it was somebody, right? And it was just that was the monster of it. And when you can control the clock by running the ball, that changes everything when it comes down to winning football games late in a season. And I think it trickles down to the same way, just like high school, especially up here, right? Where now it starts to get a little colder. Okay. It gets a little windier. All right. And if you can now just downhill run at people, ain't nobody want to tackle anybody with cold now, bro. Like that hurts a little bit more. And it's
I'll tell you this right now.
Yes, it's a mentality.
Yeah,
you can hit me, but I'm gonna hit you first. I always tell guys like be the hammer, not the nail. Like, and that's like a defensive term. But my man, if you use that on offense, game changer. And to be honest, society in general, I don't think kids are being raised to be physical anymore because of concussion, this and that. Certain ones, yes, it's all parenting, but I think it comes down to a lot of kids just aren't, doing those physical things. How many times you see kids out in doing whatever in the park playing tackle football? It's like, hey man, we're gonna pull a flag, or hey, we're playing touch. Like, I just me personally, I think it's a different, and the game has changed a little bit too in terms of. Look, I played safety. If anybody went across the middle, it was lights out, right? Like you were taught to, that guy just never was coming across the middle again. Some of those things that you instill, need to kind of, the younger guys that come up, they don't have that mentality, which is really difficult to kind of teach. And I think it takes time to teach physicality and that type of mindset to be that. But once you get to those higher levels, man, you got to realize, like, dude, I have to deliver a blow here. What am I going to do? Just sidestep this guy and not get the first down, right? Like,
tough,
it needs to be a different focal point.
Absolutely, man. I agree with you. Like if just say if we were all defense coordinators, right? And just say, a team, they threw the ball on us, right? We go out there the first drive and the team just they ran like 2 plays and then they threw a 9 route and the kid catches it. As a defensive coordinator, I come side, hey, I'm clapping the guys like, hey, look, broken coverage, we got this. We're still in the game. They just got lucky. But if that same team on that first drive was to run the ball 13 times and they ran it down our throat and we couldn't stop it, as a defensive coordinator, I'm like, look, guys, like,
we better figure something out here, dude.
We got to figure something out. So what rips the soul of a defense? A 9 route over the top, or you just gashing them play after play after play. That literally, as a defensive coordinator, he like the team actually took your soul too as well, because you're looking at your kids and they're looking at you for plays, and it's like, well, whatever we threw at them is not working. You know what I mean? So like, that's how you really take the soul of a defense. And I say one thing, like when I was working with one of the Patriots running backs, I can't say a name, but he told me, like, even in week like 13, 14 with the Patriots with Belichick, he said they would be going full padded, good on good. And he said, man, like, I don't want to sign back with the Patriots, because if they do, I'm going to retire. That's just how physical they were, and that's just the mindset that they had, and that's why they were Super Bowl champs year after year after year. It wasn't because of scheme, it was because of physicality. You know what I mean? And the players was like, yeah, like the running back did say, if they resign me, I'm retiring, because I just don't fit. I physically can't do it another year or two,
which is totally understandable. Like, you totally get it, right?
Yep.
Like, those guys have been pros and whatever. And Dave, like, you can touch on it too. Like, you understand the whole longevity type thing, but ultimately, like, Belichick didn't care. He won. No, and look, that's the wrong way to put it. He cared, right?
Yeah.
He just understood that each individual, which is why he probably changed running backs every 2-3 years. Right. There was a new name or running back by committee. He knew the physical toll that his practices and his regimen and his standards took on running back. So to be that guy of in and out of, hey, this system, that system, like, okay, I'm going to go there for 2 years, win 2 Super Bowls, and then we'll do what we got to do.
Right.
I don't think a lot of coaches are like that.
I'll tell you what's funny too is we talked about bringing back the eye. Like, I was always in high school, it was the dot, just probably like you were, the dot of the eye, right? And although I think my senior year, my coach went to, because a lot of the NFL was doing that split back stuff, and they were running like ISO out of that, and they kind of did that. But for my first 3 years, it was dot in the eye, and I always loved, it was my favorite thing as a running back, because when you were back there, like, literally, it felt like you were the king of the whole entire world, right? Because
like being the punt returner.
Well, you can see everything.
Yes, you can.
Without giving it away too, because you could scan with your eyes to see where they were, like where the team was kind of overloaded. If you were running in a certain direction before the ball was going to end it or pitch to you, you kind of already knew, like, hey, this may not be there, or this is definitely going to be there. Like, just how a team, like, you'd see more bodies to one side or not, and it was very different than when you're, and believe me, Derek knows, like, I've run a lot of, I've been at the high school level, a lot of stuff with QB run, a lot of spread stuff, but I've always felt like if you could run downhill, you were going to be, you had a chance to be a great team. And it's funny because even coaching the youth kids, we've been kind of spread because we had those kind of runners and stuff. And my son's a quarterback, and he's more of a downhill runner at quarterback, even though he could throw the ball. But at the end of the year, we found a kid that I was like, like his first year playing football, and he took him time to, like, understand football. But he was built like a running back, you know what I mean? That build. And we started to give him the ball, and we were like, that next year, that's going to be the guy that we can go and now dot the I with, and we can put in the thing that I really would like to put in is have the I game in there. So you can offset I, you could run counter tray, you could run power, you can run ISO, and then you can run your play action game and take advantage of a quarterback that can really use his hands and his feet, right? So that's all the things that the eye really gives you that
Mhm.
no other. And nowadays it may be more of at the highest level, like it's one of the sets that you're using. It's not going to be, the only
set.
set you use. It becomes one of the set. But
Right.
it's such it becomes such a lethal when you put it in, when you line up in the eye. If you've been in spread the whole game and you all of a sudden line up in the eye and you start coming downhill on a team, you're right. What you said before, the other team does not know what to do. As a guy who's been a head coach for a long time, when a team lines up in spread, I say, awesome. That's awesome. I know how to stop the spread. I know how to stop the spread. Unless the team really has a guy that could sling it like that, which is very rare.
Yeah.
I know what to do because I'm not worried about the run game. But when a team gets in there, like, we played some teams that ran like veer option, right? And they were just coming down the hill. They all these big old boys on the line, and they're just pushing you.
4-point stances, like, here we go.
Bro.
Like,
yeah, man. It looks scary.
We can line up 11 guys.
Yeah, it does.
We weren't stopping it,
Yeah.
And the guys are watching that stuff on film going, oh, like, what are we doing?
They're coming off the ball, they're chopping people. All you just seeing is let the bodies hit the floor. That's the
bodies
yeah. And you're like, as a defense, you're like, man, like now I'm worried about my knees, not even necessarily worried about tackling. So it's like, man, like I'm all out there, like my mind is everywhere. So what am I thinking now? And to capitalize on what you said, Coach, like I think the reason why we don't see so much physicality in NFL, right? Because the college used to be a great feeder system to the NFL, because in college, a lot of guys ran I formation, they ran a lot of those things, pro style offenses. And then what happened was these offensive coordinators, they get so creative, in these spread offices like the Chip Kellys and all these other guys. And it's like, okay, they go in college for 4 years running all these fancy offices, and then now they get into the NFL. Now they have to run a pro style offense, which requires them to be tough, put their quarterbacks lining up under center, running backs not at 5 yards offset. Now he's 7 yards in the backfield, and now linemen, now they really got to come off the ball. They're not so what's happening is in the NFL, it's taking a lot of teams a lot of times to adjust, because a lot of these kids haven't played in that kind of offense in 4 years. And now they're going from that fancy offense to a pro style offense. And now it's just, the timing is just off. You know what I mean? That's why you're seeing, just a lot of players not transition as well as they should, in the NFL, because like I say, they haven't played this way in years. They probably did in high school. They took a 4-year hiatus in whatever office that they were in. And then now they're back in the pros, and now they're asking them to kind of play this pro style offense. So, the adjustment is just off a little bit.
That's a great point. And I think in a long run, you're gonna see a lot more of like week to week fitting what you need to do, right? Like, it's because everybody's gonna have personnel that can do certain things on defense, and you got to figure out what that other guy can't stop. And you have the ability. Look, even the Chiefs, when they got into the Super Bowl, who did they give the ball to? The running back,
Pacheco, baby.
Yep, that's it. Pacheco
starts runs hard as hell.
Yes, yeah, right. And I actually worked with Pacheco, man. I got a story I'm gonna tell you guys about that. Yeah, bro.
Yeah, go ahead, tell us.
Oh no, Pacheco, man, he only knows one speed, dude. Like one speed. Like he was the only player that I've ever trained that I said, hey man, slow down. Like slow down, because he cuts so hard. Everything he does is aggressive, and I just didn't want to be that guy that Pacheco. Pacheco gets hurt with trainer in off season.
Right,
it's for bad
there
business. It's like, yeah. There goes stock going down. Bro. It's like I don't, and he got my face plastered all over ESPN. You know what I mean? So, but he was the only running back that I've ever worked with that I said, hey, dude, it's like slow down. You know what I mean? Like don't cut so hard. Like you got a long season ahead of you. Let's pull it back a little bit. I know what you can do, but let's just kind of taper down a little bit on the aggressive cuts. You know what I mean? But he was the only running back that I literally had to tell him, like, hey man, slow down, because he doesn't know no other speed but 150. That's it.
Yeah, I think the word that comes to mind when you think of him is like violent, right? Like he's a violent runner.
Oh
like
my gosh.
He just runs with a purpose, a passion. And know when he gets the ball, like he's getting a yard. 2. He's
Yes.
falling for 4, 5, 6,
Mhm.
right? Delivering that last blow to finish. And I think that's something else too that's incredibly underrated when it comes to running backs is the ability to finish plays, whether
Yes.
it's a positive or a negative. It's got to be you have to finish a certain way, right?
Right. Mhm.
And when you're getting tackled, it's got to be forward. Even if it's a minus, you got to be going forward, right? And then ball security. Like these defensive guys, look, man, if they're late to the party, I'm not going for a knockout blow anymore. I'm going right for the ball and I'm punching. So that ability to hold on to that thing and be a sure carrier that doesn't fumble or doesn't give up that ball. It's not out here loose when you're running or all that other. That's hard. That is extremely difficult. And as a trainer, right, I feel like when you can finish your drills with some type of that ball, like now when your awareness is always about where this ball needs to go, right? I always reference like Tiki Barber. He had serious issues fumbling that football. Then you saw him change his style of holding it and all this other kind of stuff. Like that's something else too. Do you teach that specifically, or do these guys already, when they get to you, they know what that is?
Oh no, man. So 2 things that I harp on is finished, right? Like because you get a lot of trainers and you'll see a lot of kids when they're doing these drills, like they'll make that one last cut and then you see them jog after it. Like nothing makes me cringe or nothing pisses me off more than when you make a cut, like the last cut, and then the cone is 5 yards, you don't sprint through that cone because it's very hard for me to kind of create, that physicality where somebody's really like tackling you, bringing you to the ground. So the only thing I could really lean on is, hey, after you make this cut, you see that card, you see that cone is 10 yards away. I want you to finish through that cone as hard as you can. And for me, my rule is you finish 3 yards past the cone, not at the cone, right? And then the next thing I want to talk about is just, ball security. Like I tell the athletes all the time, like if you play defense, right, what's better, a turnover or a tackle? And they're like, and sometimes they're like, well, a tackle. I'm like, no. Think about it. If you was a DB and you wanted to get on somebody's highlight reel, I said, what's better? You making the man fumble or you tackle him? Oh, I get it, coach. Fumble. So I said, that's what they're thinking. A lot of DBs really don't want to tackle. They just want to get that ball up out of your hands so they can get them as offer, or they can get it to a Pro Bowl, or they can get that stat. So you have to be mindful of those 2 things. Make sure you're finishing the run in practice, because what happens, you play how you practice. And the second thing is make sure you protect that ball, because guys aren't really trying to tackle you, right? Once you get to that third level and you get on that perimeter, guys are reaching for that ball. Even when you're in traffic, I'll give that, because a lot of linebackers, they're engaged in tackles, and a lot of times the only thing they can do is reach out and try to reach for the ball. That's like their last line of defense. So you got to make sure that you're protecting that ball, and you got to make sure that you're finishing. So those are 2 things that I really harp on, man. And it's actually been successful for me, because a lot of running backs that I have trained, they haven't been labeled as fumblers, because I tell them, you don't want to be labeled as a fumbler, bro. Like that is the worst label you want, because once you're labeled as a fumbler, man, you can't,
right?
Yeah, bro, it's hard to get rid of.
That's not just a stat. That's not that will always be on
your
resume.
Yes,
coughs up the ball, right? Or he weak holding the ball. Like, I mean, think about it. And Dave, you can attest to it too, right? I mean, a lot of these guys, when it comes to the ball security aspect of it.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is to be able to hold on to the football and be able to not turn the ball over.
I mean, it seems like it's such an obvious.
If you're a good back, and you hold on to the ball, you're going to wear the other team down. If you're a good back, and if you're going to carry the ball, 20 game, and you fumble every game one time, people are like, oh, one time, 1 out of 20. That's not for.
Yeah, guys. See, that's where guys just don't understand.
If it's not 1 or 2 times the whole year, that's a guy makes a great play, his helmet gets on the ball. Things happen from that standpoint. 1 or 2 times a year, that's usually something you can't control. But anything that you can control, there should be 0 fumbles. Fumbles. You're running along sideline. You have the ball in the wrong spot. It gets knocked out of you. You're holding it. You think you're breaking into the open for a touchdown, but you have to outrun this guy. And you all of a sudden, instead of keeping the ball tight because you try to sprint just a little bit harder, listen, just keep sprinting. He's probably in open space. If you keep sprinting, more than likely he ain't going to get you anyway.
No.
And if he over pursues you, just put your foot in the ground and you go across. And that's one thing I always, to me, is always the difference between a great back in open space and a back that's just pretty good. When he gets along that sideline, he's sprinting, he has a great feel when people are going to over pursue or under pursue. Because how many times do you see a back, he breaks in the open and he gets tackled because he doesn't have a feel for over pursue or under pursue. But the great ones have that feel. They put their foot in the ground and you're like, oh my God, such an easy touchdown. It really wasn't an easy touchdown. He just had that feel of over pursue, or like he knows if he's under pursuing, I just out sprint him. You know, he over pursuing, he lets him take that one extra step, puts his foot in the ground, and you hear the coach from the sideline talking about bad pursuit angles, and it's really not bad pursuit angle. It's the fact that this guy has a feel for you. Just took that one extra step that instead of kind of closing, you took that one, and he comes underneath. That to me is the difference. What are some of the other things that you like when you see like the difference between a really good back and elite back? What are the things that you see that's the difference that they can do?
I think the difference between they understand how to, I call it the art of deception, right? Like they know how to manipulate their defenders in such a way that, that just always reigns supreme in their favor, right? So just say if there's a double, like, two linemen are doubling this 3-tech and one of them have to come off to the linebacker. This running back, even though that he has this, say the B gap is open or he has that right lane open, he understands if I could just wait just like a half second, or if I could just manipulate with my shoulders to turn it just a little bit to the left, just to kind of get that linebacker to pull him down, and then I can escape back out to the right. That's, for me, that's just intelligent running, so that's one of the things that, that I think that separates a great back from an average back, just that art of deception, that's that timing. And also another thing that capitalized on, you said running up that sideline, understand the timing, you know what I mean? Because sometimes you could, and Chase Brown did this one game against Northwestern, because Chase Brown is a fast guy, but the guy had a big time pursuit on him. But what Chase did was he sped up, he slowed down, and then he sped up again, you know what I mean? And what the defender did, he didn't know what to do. Like he was running fast, and when he slowed up, he kind of ran at him. Yeah, and then because you got to understand your speed for that too, right? Am I a fast guy where I can outrun this guy, or do I need to slow up a little bit, dip in, and then come back out? You know what I mean? So, but to kind of answer your question, it's the guys who just understand, how to set up their blocks and know how to bring the defenders to their blockers. You know what I mean? Like that's what separates a good running back from an average running back.
It's very, very true. When I played at UConn, I was a running back my first 2 years. I was a starter as a redshirt freshman. Then Coach Holtz came in, didn't really like me as a fullback. I played linebacker the rest of my career. But we had my freshman year, this guy was, and it's still probably the all-time leading rusher at UConn. I was originally part of the twos with this guy. His name was Wilbur Gilliard. And we were the twos. And when we would go into games, because we were playing like 30%, and the other group was playing like, or maybe it was like 60-40. We were playing 40%, they were playing 60%. We would go into games and we would rush for acres. And I was I was like, this guy's the best. I would tell the running back coach all the time, this is the best back. Even if to give him to life, but eventually we both became the starters. But what was great about it was really he understood where all the pieces were and just had a feel for this. And he would slash like any block you made, he made right. As the fullback, any way you blocked him, he made it right. It was just so unbelievable how he probably ran like a 4, we were FCS at the time, and he probably ran a 4.75 40. I mean, he was not fast, but he ran for acres and ran for touchdown after touchdown because he knew how to maneuver and knew how to speed up and slow down and knew how to be patient. And it was amazing because I would come off I remember he ran for like 250 or something, and they're like, "Oh, you're doing such a great job," I'm like, listen, he's any hole you make him, he is gonna take it and gain yards, and if you give him a real if you get a real hole for him, forget it. I mean, he might get a difference,
And I think that's another thing, Dave, too, right? Like the higher the level, the better the players, the smaller those holes or creases get. And if you're a guy that can scoot through that little bit of space, you're on a different, right? Because let me get into that second level. Now the space opens up because there's just there's less bodies, right? And I think that's something more running back coaches need to kind of coach or teach or get their guys to understand is there's levels of the defense. And once you break through, like that initial one has a lot of guys. You got 5 linemen, tight ends, right? D lineman, right? Maybe a walked up backer or a safety. There's a lot of bodies in there. When you break through to now that second level, there's more space. There's less people. You can now go and do certain things. But that initial crease is what really separates.
I'll build on that for you. And I'm curious what Coach thinks about this.
Yep.
I think that's very important because there are guys that don't know how to do that. I think those guys get washed out right away at running back because any pretty good running back has to be able to find their way through that crease, right?
Yes.
But the great running backs to me, you talked about the second level, Derek. When the linebackers are there, ready to tackle you, great running backs manipulate past those linebackers in that space. And the really, really good running backs do it over and or in a secondary over and over and over again. And you're like, how? Running back, linebacker had free shot at him, right?
Yeah.
And linebackers are like, because I played linebacker, right? And I remember the difference between, like, we played, Jerry Rizuma was the best runner. He ended up being a DB in the NFL for the Bears for many years. But he was the best running back in the Yankee Conference when I was a senior. And Jerry Azuma would make it so hard when he got to your level. Like, I would come free. And it was almost impossible to bring him down. And if you didn't get to him immediately, it was, I'm telling you, it was a touchdown. And that's what the really good backs are able to do. Like, you could come free as a linebacker and you will miss them. That's the thing that they can do that's so unbelievable. That's what Wilbur used to do. I couldn't believe it, how he would be in the secondary over and over again when guys would have, like, dead to rights on him. A lineman didn't get to the second level, and it was just him. He didn't have time to react. Like, it was just his ability to maneuver between that second level space to get into the third level. And that was like,
well,
talk about that as a running back.
Well, Dave, just to understand from as a safety, the most, like, talk about, like, being in a situation that you don't want to be in. Anytime that linebacker broke through, what first line, second line, when you're one-on-one in space and that guy's got a two-way go, we got problems. Right? As a safety, worst feeling in the world is that dude coming through, coming free, and now you're just praying to God that you're downhill enough, fast enough that you get there and wrap his ass up before that guy has the ability to make a cut or go any other direction.
Right.
100%.
The best running backs, and that's what Blake Corum was good at. Like, the first and second level is just, like, easy for them. Like, let me say the first level, because no matter what slants or stunts that the defense do at the line of scrimmage, they know how to either get through those creases or they know how to create their own lane. You know what I mean? Like, that is the deciding factor of who's the best guy. You know what I mean? And Blake Corum was the best. He can make any cut or any move at the line of scrimmage that will give him an opportunity at the second or third level.
Right.
Because you get a lot of running backs, once the defense crash or they stunt right side or they do something, it's like they just kind of dead to rights. They just stop their feet and they just kind of just fall, you know, and they get tackled and fall. But you get those running backs that no matter what, I don't care if the lineman, if that 3 technique beats that guard across his face, this running back has enough time to react and create that extra gap that he can now advance up to the second level and make something happen. So those are the guys who are really, truly, like, just dangerous. The guys who can, whatever the defensive line does, they know how to, they're creative enough to make a move that's going to allow them to get to that second and third level. And then once they get to the second, third level, they do what they do. But it's merely, you just got to get through that first line of defense, which is the D lineman, because they're doing a lot of freaky stuff up there. You know, sometimes they'll have 2-3 techniques.
They're coming up with
they'll have
kinds
2-3 techniques, and then both of those guys are pinch A gaps. And then, you know, you see that you could jump cut B and replace those guys. So it's
guys
the guy who knows how to replace.
Across the D line, right?
Yes,
like,
exactly.
You know,
they're standing
all over
up.
The place. There's movement.
Yeah,
How
man,
fast
they're standing
can you
up.
process that?
or that linebacker's lined up right behind that two-eye technique, and you don't know whether he's going to shoot B or A, that doesn't really phase that running back. No matter what you throw at him, he's creative enough that when he gets that ball, he can create some type of move. They call it, I know Nick Saban calls it instinctual intelligence. He's instinctually intelligent to create a move or do something that's going to allow him to advance to that second or third level. And I think honestly that's what Ashton Genty has. He has that ability. The next running back who I believe that has that ability is Amari Hampton. He's really, really good at UNC, man. I think he's not getting enough pub, but he's been putting up some numbers too. And that kid is really, really good.
Unbelievable stuff, man. It really,
Yeah,
really
man.
is unbelievable. It's
Yes, sir.
that now your website. So before we let you
Mhm.
go,
Yes, sir.
and by the way, it's been fabulous having you on.
Yeah,
If
man.
you
It's
ever
been
want to
awesome,
come back
man.
on and talk,
Yeah,
I'm
man.
sure
Yeah.
you have guys getting ready for the draft when you get to that point. If you want to talk about that stuff later on,
Absolutely.
down the line, we'll love to have you. It's the runningbackacademy.com, right?
Yes, sir.
Is your site where people can reach out to you, and
Yes,
anything
sir.
on Instagram too? What's Instagram or Twitter?
Yes,
Whatever.
sir. So on Instagram, you have the_running_back_academy. So that's my Instagram. Twitter, now X, I always call it. It's underscore
Listen,
RBA Academy.
we're still
Right.
Twitter guys, man. It's
Yeah,
all
right.
good. Like, it's
You know what I
it's all
mean?
good.
It's all the same thing. Same thing on the same thing on TikTok. It's so many social portals now. I can't even keep up. But yeah, you guys can follow me. You can get in contact with me. I also have my own app. It's called the Running Back Academy on Coach IQ. You can just click the link in my bio. I have my own running back community where I kind of just post plays and just do like teach tapes and stuff like that, voiceovers and stuff like that. So you can always just either go on any one of those portals, click on my link, and join the community, man. And you can always just kind of understand my philosophy on the running back position. And guys who I look up to in the game that's also taught me a lot. I kind of use a lot of their philosophies and their teachings and just try to educate the community. You know what I mean? Because the running back position is coming back, but I think it's one of those positions that's really undercoached, because a lot of people just feel like, oh, if they got it, they got it. And a lot of these high schools, a lot of times the running back coaches is nothing but the security guard, you know what I mean? And and it's unfair, but at the same time, these running backs, they want to learn, they want to be coached, and it's not dead. Trust me, it's coming back.
It's a fabulous, fabulous point. And I want people to not just put the coach at the running back's position is the guy that they have to have that they think doesn't know anything about football, but they just want him to get along with the guys. You know what I mean?
Yep.
He gets along with guys well. So, okay, we'll put him at the running position.
Right.
It to me is a huge mistake. There's so much. And that's why I love we're friends with EJ Barthel. Who used to run my events for many years, and he's at Nebraska. And EJ always tells me of how he's coaching him up at every point. And when he first started coaching running backs, I don't know, 10 years ago or whatever, and we started doing it at the college level, guys were not used to that. They weren't used to that. It was like half of it was like babysitting. You know what I mean? They thought they were getting a babysitter basically, right? And he was coaching them up in every single facet of every single thing. And he said he noticed the dip. That's what moved him up in his career. He was every one of his running backs doing great. And he got to the Carolina Panthers, and he's at Nebraska now, right? But everyone, because he coaches up the position so much, and viewed that as it was his opportunity, at the college level to really grow. And so he always has said that to me, like, I coach these running backs up. My whole job is to make the difference every single play with them. And I think that's what's so great about what you're doing, because I think that the running backs, you're 100% right. Guys are just like, hey, we need them to get along with the running backs, keep them happy. They're the stars of our team. You know what I mean? Like a guy that gets along with them. And man, those guys want to learn. And anytime I've ever coached as an assistant, when I've coached the running backs, I think the running backs were always shocked at the first practice. I was in there, not just everyone could do the individual drill, but when we got in the team, the running back coaches traditionally, you see in team, they're just hanging out in the back. I'd be right in there, like, hey man, that cut, that was a good cut, but this would be a great cut.
Right,
man. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, and helping them understand good versus great cut, right? Oh, you got to listen, Oh, okay, there's no hole. There's nowhere to go. You better push forward and make it. Sometimes a 1 yard run is the best run we can get, and that's what we need to have, right?
Right.
You
We have
can't
to
have
play another
negative
down.
three. No
Right.
negative plays, no negative threes. We don't want
You
to
got to stay in their ear, man.
That's
You got to stay in their
exactly
ear.
it. And
And
I'm
I'll say
sorry.
one thing before. No, you're good. I'll say one thing before I leave. I remember two things. So I remember Chris Winkie. Remember, he was a quarterback, right? He was the running backs coach at Southern Mississippi. You know what I
Yep.
mean? And I was no disrespect to him, but it just goes to show that a lot of times what they'll do is they'll take like a wide receiver or quarterback guy, and they'll have him coach the running backs. NC State did this too, and because they just need another coordinator on the offensive side of the ball. So they say, okay, let our running backs, let's take a hit just so we can get another coordinator in position to kind of help us with the game plan. You know what I mean? It's like, nah, man, like let's get a true running back coach, because the guys who actually play the position and they coach that position, those are the guys who've raised through the ranks fast, because I'm pretty sure Barthel, hopefully I pronounce his name right. He played running back, right? And you've
Yes,
seen how he skyrocketed. He was in the NFL before he even knew it. You know what I mean? So most of the guys who played the position and they coached that position at college, man, they rise quick. Carlos Lachlan, who's the running back coach at Ohio State, another running back guy who rose through the ranks like so fast in 7 years. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, we really need guys who played the position, the coach position. And if you didn't, man, just really truly don't treat it as, oh, if they got it, they got it. No, really dive in, really understand the position and coach these guys up. Because like as I said before, the running back position is coming back, and you definitely want your running back department to be a big part of that offense, and a big production of that offense. Mm-hmm.
There's no doubt about it. And you know what the cool thing about the running back is? People don't realize it. There's so many nuances to the position. There's so many nuances that you could give little tidbits to good running backs and make them better running backs. And they will, because they really are. You're 100% right. From the time they're little kids, everyone's just like, oh, this kid's unbelievable. Just hand him the ball. Just handle the ball. Just handle the ball. Like,
and then that's why when he gets to those higher levels, he's still that same guy, right? And he doesn't develop. And then people are going, wow, he scored 50 touchdowns as in middle school, but now, like, what has happened? Like, now he's doing nothing. Like, remember when you were a beast in 8th grade? Like, because you just said, here's the ball, go do it, and didn't continue to coach him at that high level where he needs more, feed him more, and now watch what he does, right? And look, I think that goes across the board for every position. Look, sometimes we as coaches take for granted that we have a really great player, but that great player needs to be coached just as tough as the least talented player on the team. Those guys want that just as much as those other guys, or if not, need that, because they've been able to do it with just their pure ability. Now start coaching those other little tidbits, and now you really got something special.
Yeah, because you get a guy that's just ahead of his time, right? So for me, my philosophy is the kid that's ahead of his time, you gotta teach him to control his confidence. Like, you got to keep him grounded, while the other guys who need that, you got to build. It's kind of weird. Like, if you have a running back room of 4 guys, just say 3, one of those guys just ahead of his time, the other 2, they got to work there. So the guy who's just ahead of his time, my philosophy is I got to keep this guy grounded, right? You know what I mean? While the other 2 running backs, I got to build their confidence. You know what I mean? Because the other kid that's ahead of his time, he's good. You know what I mean? Like, everybody's praising him. So you got to be that one coach to kind of keep him grounded. The other 2 backs who actually need the help, you know what I mean? They're not quite there yet, but they can get there. You have to consistently kind of build their confidence so they can kind of get to the level of the other guy, which they probably never will. But that's just kind of how, you got to play the psychological game with your running back room, right? The kid that's just ahead of his time, he's really good. You got to keep him grounded. While the other 2 who got to work to get there, you got to learn how to build their confidence, So that's some of the psychology that I kind of use on my running backs when I'm coaching them. And it's not the kid that's ahead of time, I'm beating him down. It's just, I know he's going to be good. He's going to get the praises. He's going to get the assurance from everybody that he's good. So, but you got to be the one guy to kind of keep him humble and keep him grounded, to understand that there's always more work to do, and there's always another guy that's just as good as you out there that you don't even know about.
But phenomenal point. The guy ahead of his time sometimes doesn't end up getting there because everyone's praising him. You know what I mean? And I always think that's the biggest shame, is because he really could have got there. And then, and kids are kids, right? Like, kids are kids. If they think they can, if they think what they're doing is all right and everyone's praising them, and they don't ever get corrected, I mean, why would they think any differently, right? Why would they think
Right.
any differently? There's no reason
Yep.
for them to think any differently. And the kid what you talked about is like who's pretty good. He's like you're investing in him, and he sometimes passes that guy because he's like he had to work for it. My whole thing with anybody who's a good athlete, I'm like, it's important to always continue to work. I had a parent ask me who's one of the kid's a really good player on my team, and she's concerned because her no one in the family's that tall, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm worried he's going to be, just a youth star, a decent high school player. Maybe he can't play. I said, if he keeps working and never loses the edge to keep working, okay, no matter what his height is or isn't, he's going to be the best he's going to be able to be. But if it gets to be, it's so easy for me because I'm ahead of everybody, then that's when you see those stories of I call it the Cody Paul story,
Yeah, man.
Cody Paul, the greatest internet youth running back of all time. I mean, those clips are those clips are bonkers. Paul when he was a young kid, and he was still a very good back, and he was a Division III running back. It wasn't that, but he never quite got there. Part of it may be the size and all that kind of thing, but part of it is it's very hard if someone doesn't keep holding your feet to the fire.
Yeah, man.
To keep pushing because you don't know what you don't know as a kid. You just don't know what you don't know, and then all of a sudden it's too late, and you have to push through those development years. You've got to push through those middle school years and those high school years to get as good as you can there. Because when you do get to college, I do believe this, what you said, you may get in a situation where some guy who's really a quarterback is coaching you at running backs. So if you're not if you haven't established that within yourself, it's going to be hard to continue to improve and develop, and get to where you need to be. But
absolutely.
It's been awesome, man.
Man, for real, man. I love this, man. I had a great time.
Appreciate you, Coach.
Your knowledge it's so valuable, and not just obviously for the elite guys that you work with. Obviously, it's valuable for those guys. But what you do with the younger kids, man, to continue to produce elite running backs. As an ex running back, I love it.
Thank you.
I was one of those guys that nobody wanted to touch, like they were scared in high school. Not in, it's funny in youth. I was the guy who was pretty good, but I wasn't like unreal. But then in high school, all of a sudden, like they were scared to like coach me on certain things. I don't know why. You know what I mean? And they were scared. They didn't want to mess with the success, right? And it's something that like people like you are much needed because it helps those guys know that they've got to keep pushing no matter how good they are. I don't care if you're scoring 40 touchdowns in the season.
Always
right?
some work to do.
Look at Derrick Henry. He's the all-time leading rusher in the history of high school. Man, he kept pushing. He kept pushing. And he's an all-pro and maybe one day a Hall of Famer. And that's, he could have easily not done any of that, right? He was
hell yeah.
Yeah, man. He could.
And he
literally took his foot off the pedal, man. There's always more work to do, man. And I just try to tell these kids, man, I was a good running back myself, so it's really hard to impress me. You know what I mean? I think that's a big part of it too.
Great, like, that's a great point.
I've scored 8 touchdowns in one game, so it's like, hey, dude, like you're good, man, but like,
pump
it's very hard to impress me. Pump your brakes.
And then you can
I pop in my highlight. They're like, holy coach, like, man, man. So that's
shit,
why
we all got those, brother. Like,
you can be as good as you want to be, and you can still not make it. You know what I mean? And it's really not about making it, man. We just want you to go as far as you can. You know what I mean? And whatever your plan is after that, we can touch that. But like, man, we want you to maximize and take this game as far as you can. Meet those people, go travel, go play, go do whatever, man. But for me, it's just very hard to impress me as a coach. That's why I coach the way I do.
I'm with you.
No doubt about it. Nothing more
needs
to be said. Thank you,
sir.
Coach, for everything.
Coach, appreciate you, man.
Nah, man. Thank you guys, man. This was awesome.
Go see Coach, and I can't thank you enough for coming on. It's really great.
Yeah, I'm excited, man. Whenever you guys need me, man, I'll be touching base with you guys around Combine too as well.
Awesome, Coach. Appreciate you, man. Have a good day.
Thank you. All right, you too, brothers. Thank you. All right, bye-bye.
That was fantastic, dude. That was just unbelievable. People underestimate what can be done at the running back position, right? They're always so focused.
Positions in general, Dave. I just feel like everybody gets somewhat scared to touch the guys that are good.
Yeah.
You know, like everybody kind of just like, oh, he's good. I don't want to, like, dude, if anybody, like, and this is what I'll say too, right? Like, and I always reference this point. Like, when I was coaching at Bosco, everybody's like, oh, it's easy to coach those kids. You know, they're all good. Yeah, that's part of the problem. Because the guy, like, and it's not a problem. It's a great problem to have, but it's not a problem. But when your 7th, 8th, 9th guy at receiver wants to be just as good and is just as good as that 1, 2, 3, right? To now continue to give those guys stuff and work pushing forward when they're already at that level, that's coaching, dude. Right? Like, everybody always wants to talk about taking the guy who can't walk and chew gum and then making him an all whatever player. But those guys that already have that, to continue to work with them and get them better, that's on a different level, right? Even like you see these NFL guys work with these and work with one-on-one trainers in the off season with all that kind of stuff, right? And it's like, why is that guy working? Like, he's already made it. He's the guy. No, they want to be even better than they are already. And it's a lot of these coaches just want to put a name next to the guy that's made it, right? And they're not really going to coach them.
It's a great point. When I was the last time I was a running back coach, which was when I was at OT and I was the special teams coordinator. That was 2016. It was so interesting because when they had me do the running backs, and I was like, the first time we went into team and I was correcting, like I said, oh, good cut, but great cut would have been this. They looked at me like I had 10 heads. What do you mean?
Yeah, like, what are you saying? Why are you coaching this guy?
Well, they're like, why are you criticizing? The look was, why are you criticizing me? And I was like, good cut versus great cut. I'm like, good cut. You made a good cut. You gained yards. Great cut would have been over here.
You're like, look, I gave you your props, but it could have been this, right? Like, that's a 6-yard run that could have been a 35-yard run.
Exactly. And so, but I'll tell you this, and that team had a lot of good running backs because obviously Old Japan always has some really good players. But I felt great because I felt like all those kids at the end of the year, all within their skill set, got better and improved.
That's the whole thing.
Yep. And we
like, if you're the same player every week, to me, that's the problem. Like, you should be progressing, getting better, certain things, right? Like, we need to be working towards these next steps. Like, don't be the same player that you always were. And yeah, like, you know, if you're coaching D-backs, hey man, yeah, you knocked the ball away, but you could have had an interception, right? Or hey, you had a QB hurry, right? If you're a D lineman or something, but it could have been a sack, right? Like, these are the things that if coaches aren't coaching you on, you're not really coaching. Like, you're just one of those guys that's there to wear the polo.
Absolutely right. I always love when you say that.
Like, here's your t-shirt, dude.
Oh my God, that's so funny. It's so funny. I'm responding to a few of our. For once, we actually got people that said they liked our stuff. You know.
Wow.
Coach
is good, man. Like I said, I was looking at his stuff for a little while, and I just really kind of liked the way he approached everything, right? And the fact that he doesn't. It's not name dropping to be like, oh, this guy, that guy, like, you know what I mean? It's like, dude, I work with these dudes. I know what good is. Like, try and get there. Like, let me help you get there. And look, to me, anybody that's working where he works, right, down in that Miami-Dade, South Florida, like, they got a little bit of they're working with a different type of cat. You know what I'm saying? And that's why you see a lot of those guys go down there to work with those guys, because that's just what is created down there. It's wild. It's just good dudes all over. So, you know, he's working with some of the highest level talent, but it also, you can see how it can trickle down to, you know, college levels and youth level and all that stuff, high school. Like, it just works. And, you know, for us, you know, the running back position will always be pivotal in whatever offenses that we are.
Yeah,
and on the defensive side of the ball, like, you know, when you got to deal with a hell of a running back, like, dude, like, you know, that's going to be a different game plan.
There's no doubt about it. All right. Until next time. Wait, until
yes, sir.
What day
we're Friday. We're Friday as of right now.
Friday. All right. Let's get on out of here. Till Friday.